Hello and welcome to Queen Mary Questions, the show that allows you, the students, to ask prominent figures in Queen Mary whatever you like.
Hi, I'm Millie Pritchard, Editor-in-Chief of The Print, and today I'm joined with Vice President Welfare, Ella Harvey from QMSU. So, in your manifesto, you said you would like to introduce mental health first aid training for selected lecturers in every department and all SU staff, part-time officers and sabbaticals. What actions have you taken on this?
With the mental health first aid training, so I put that in my manifesto because I think it's really important that we kind of have a culture where we're all really open about mental health. It's been very difficult to make any steps towards implementing that at all. So actually, as far as universities go, we do really well with mental health first aid training. So we do a lot of work with academic members of staff, professional services, so people that aren't academic members of staff, and that we do in-house mental health first aid training. So a lot of members of staff do actually have the training, so that's not something I've necessarily needed to make movements on. In terms of part-time reps and SABs, I think I would like to do kind of like a half-day course at Student Council away weekend, just so it's a lot easier for us in terms of implementation, because I've only just had the training and I've been a SAB for 6 months. Like, it's been so hard because the full course is about £400 per person, so it would be really, really hard to get the full training. But definitely the awareness side of it, I think, is the most important part for me. So that's definitely a training that I'm looking to develop at the moment so that it can be rolled out for next year.
On a similar note, you wanted to introduce an advice and counselling service on the Whitechapel campus. So how has that gone?
So with this one, after having actually talked to medics and dentists, which was why, they said that kind of a lot of the reason for that being kind of an issue in the first place, so medics and dentists don't tend to access those services just because of the stigma in the workplace that they have around it, particularly medics as well, where they're the ones that would be like directly diagnosing those issues. So what we've found was a better solution is having longer hours at the Mile End one, so it's not as obvious you're accessing those services. But the key for that, to make sure that works, is having those longer hours, so that if medics and dentists are on placement or lectures tend to be the whole day, they're able to access those services after hours. And also having more direct welfare support for medics and dentists, because their needs would be a bit different than like a kind of a Mile End based student, in that they've got kind of fears around isolation on placement and those sorts of things. So making sure someone's there that is able to understand those issues. And so each department will have like welfare advisors in the same way that Mile End does, and they'll understand those issues as well. So there's that kind of like frontline support as well as like the ongoing support as well. So I think the key thing with the Whitechapel campus that I think would be the most helpful is doing a lot more around kind of breaking the stigma of mental health. So things like initiatives like Mental Health Awareness Fortnight and Study Well at Whitechapel and Charterhouse as well was really, really critical in that. So that's something that is happening.
Since being VP Welfare, active bystander training has been delivered to all venue staff at Drapers and the Griffin. The university is hiring a sexual harassment project manager, and Queen Mary will be getting an effective online reporting tool sometime in the future. What else are you still looking to achieve in terms of sexual harassment in the next few months?
So I think the next steps, because what's been so fantastic about this is that we've already done really, really critical steps, which is really, really great. So the next thing that's going to be happening is I'm going to be working with Rose, who is the harassment project manager, on training and rolling that out to make sure that all members of staff understand it, and working with her to lobby to improve reporting pathways as well. So a lot of institutions have things like Report and Support, which is a reporting platform that you can report things on, and that's something that we will also be getting. But the issue with other institutions is the departments that deal with complaints and those sorts of procedures don't understand the nuance that sexual violence brings with it. So it's about making sure that those people understand and making sure that members of staff are really confident in taking disclosures and supporting students through that process, because often it can be trauma in itself reporting it. So it's making sure that students are supported and feel safe in doing so, and that is so critical that that's correct. So that's going to be a lot of my work around sexual violence in the future.
Cool. In a similar vein, in light of the group of Warwick students being suspended from university over the messages about rape in the private group chat, are you confident that if a similar thing happened at Queen Mary, our university would handle the situation better and discipline students before it makes national news?
Yeah, so no. I don't think that's the case. I think an issue with institutions, and we are not different, is that I think they kind of want to bury their head in the sand a lot with these issues, and I don't think our university would be different, unfortunately. I don't think that's out of malicious kind of intent. It's literally that I just don't think people feel comfortable dealing with that subject, which has huge knock-on effects because of the culture we have here of kind of being quiet about these issues, which is why it's really important that the union continues to lobby on these things. So no, I'm not confident. Hopefully though, once report and support comes into play and it really starts to take effect with the work that I've been doing on sexual violence, that it will be easier for those students that were affected by the perpetrators to come forward and report it and make sure they get the help they need so that they're able to deal with it without it being on a national scale. But the problem that's at Warwick and also currently exists here, but will be changing, is that the reporting process and the complaints process is exactly the same as it is for every other complaint. So whether you steal something from the Queen's building or you rape another student, it's the same process. So you can see what their statement is on it. You can see loads of stuff that you would never be able to see in a police-led investigation of sexual violence, which can really hurt the case. So that can be really triggering for the student that reports it, and also it means that it's a lot harder to come up with evidence for the situation, so it won't be dealt with properly now at this stage. But hopefully in the future that will change.
Thank you for being honest.
Oh yeah, nothing but honest.
So this is a submitted question. There has been excellent work done for women's and LGBT rights and sexual health this year. However, would you agree other forms of welfare support has been neglected by the SU this year?
I don't know about neglected. I definitely think I completely understand where this person's coming from in terms of there's a lot of issues around other work that the student union does that doesn't always meet standards, particularly because the students union deals with so many different student groups, volunteering, raise and give, events, kind of, management of student staff. Like, there's so many different operations that it does that it's hard, even as a sabbatical officer, to make sure that you're overseeing all of those things, because that's not necessarily in our role. But I wouldn't say that I'm not apologetic at all about working a lot on sexual violence, because no other sabbatical officer for the last 4 years has had anything on their manifesto or in their work about sexual violence. So I think when I came into the role, I was like, oh my God, there's so much I need to do. So I kind of hit the ground running, and I'm really happy with the work that I've done. So I think what would be really good is if the SABs and I kind of worked more on a strategy to overlook kind of some issues that students have raised over the year, particularly in terms of racism. That's come up quite a lot. I think it's something that we absolutely need to deal with directly, but I think it needs to be all the SABs deal with that in their approach.
So this was a submitted question. Will QMSU ever recognise its inherent racism seen in the full staff makeup, which is 90% white?
I hope so. I definitely hope so. And I think the issues around us having a 90% white workforce really comes off in our interactions with students a lot of the time, with our priorities. And something that Redwan was saying the other day, which I thought was really important, was that he was saying, if we wanted to, we could headhunt BME people to work at the student union if that was a real priority, which I think is a really, really important point. So I think a lot of different people have made really important points around the issue. So I think, as I said before, the best thing to do would to be pulling in all those kind of suggestions and building a strategy on it, which is something that, that's a lot of work. Like, strategies can take 2 years to do, like our current sports strategy that the student union's doing, that I'm sure no one even knows about, but we're working on that at the moment. Or, well, we launched it, and that took about 18 months for like a couple of full-time staff members to write. So something around racism in the students union would be a huge amount of work. But I think if they had a SAB team that came in and that was their priority from the beginning, and they carried that through the year, I think they could do it, but it would take a lot of manpower on that. So yeah, but Something that I will say is that the staffs and I always want to hear like suggestions and stuff. So if anyone has any suggestions, that'd be great. But yeah.
What upcoming campaigns and events are you looking forward to launching?
So at the moment I'm working on Study Well, which is a campaign that the Student Union runs every year. So this year we're going to try and make it a little bit less events based and more kind of like practical support based. That's something that I've been harping on about quite a lot this year in terms of mental health campaigns where the Student Union aren't always the best in that they're like fun and whatever, but they're not necessarily like helpful for mental health. And I'm not saying by any means that I'll be able to achieve that this year, but I'm trying to move towards that in terms of like lots of giveaways of like fruit and water. I'm having like dates and bananas to break fast for students doing Ramadan over the studying period, like more practical stuff rather than being like bath bomb workshop. Like I feel like I definitely didn't want to take away an hour and a half of my studying to do that sort of thing. So doing that more would be really important. And also as part of that, I'm working on at the moment expanding the advice and counselling service. So now I've had all these wins with sexual violence stuff, I'm now kind of tilting my focus to more mental health things, which is what the rest of my manifesto was about.
And what has been your highlight of the year so far in this position?
I think successfully within a year, like all the sexual violence stuff I've done, I've been so impressed with. But I think the main thing was successfully lobbying for report and support, which cost upwards of 50 grand to kind of have all the maintenance around it and that sort of thing, and also lobbying for a member of staff to make sure that's implemented even when I leave. So they're only going to be in post for a year, but their whole job is making sure that's implemented correctly and the training around it is sufficient and that kind of thing. And I'm like, that is so critical, that work's being done, so I'm really, really happy with that. And that's one of those things where as a SAB, it's one of those things where you're like, that is something that I've made a real active difference on in the lives of students, which feels really good. So.
And what was it like meeting Bill Gates? What did he say to you? I went to the event and it was just so good.
Yeah, it was really fun. Like he was really, really sweet. I think I embarrassed myself a little bit because like he was like, oh, are you guys like seniors or like? And I was like, I don't know what that means, Bill. What does that even mean? So Colin Bailey loved that. But yeah, he was really, really sweet, and he was like asking us about what courses we did, that kind of thing, and like the area. And he was sort of like, he like looked directly at me. You know, I was like, oh, I'm from Southampton, and like blah blah blah. And he was like, so gentrification in the area, and I was like, I was like, oh, that's you really. He was like, I just really want to know about what you think, and I was like, oh, what do I think about gentrification? I'm directly contributing to. Cool. So that was cool. That was really, really fun. But yeah, he was a really, really cool, down-to-earth guy. So would recommend meeting him.
You get the opportunity.
Yeah, if you get the opportunity, take it. Really cool guy.
And final question. So in 2016, Miranda Black was VP Welfare and successfully ran to be president of QMSU. Ahmed did the same with VP Welfare.
Yeah.
Are you going to follow the tradition?
So I'm technically not allowed to answer that because it would be construed as campaigning. But no. I think I always think it's really interesting that like welfare candidates are always the ones that go for it, but I think being welfare, you see such a spectrum of different students. Like I've literally talked to thousands of students this year because it's such a student-facing role as well, and you realise how much work there is to be done. I think not more so than the other officers, but like they kind of sit a lot more in meetings where as I'm always like doing campaigns, I'm always out, and like I'm always in like different like zone meetings and committee meetings and things like that, so you really realise how much there is to be changed. Because I was thinking about that as well. I was like, literally everyone that's gone for president, there's always been like a welfare SAB for the last couple of years, but it makes sense.
Well, thank you, Ella.
Thank you so much.